Hello, beautiful and amazing people. How is everyone? I'm super, super, super excited to see you guys. Woo! So, welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. Tonight, I am going to be teaching you guys how to build wealth utilizing a trust, you guys, okay? So, there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn about how to actually effectively build generational wealth. And a lot of us, we are walking around here and we are talking about how we're building generational wealth, but we don't have the tools in order to effectively build generational wealth. So we cannot say that we're building generational wealth if we don't have the things that I'm about to go over tonight, okay? So I'm excited. Let's see who we have in the house. If you guys can come on camera, I do not want to be the only person on camera. So if y'all can come on camera, come join me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have a short presentation for you guys. So I have a couple slides where I want to explain to you guys what an actual trust is. And then from there, I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A, okay? So with that being said, let's see who we have. Okay, we got Gerda in the house. We got DC. We have Pamela. All right, we got a couple of iPhones. Jose, Ken, Keon, Nick. All right, Ronald. All right, so it's so nice that you guys are here. So let me introduce myself. My name is Christina. I am a trust strategist, you guys, okay? So I am here to oh, let me deactivate that sound because it is driving me crazy. So I am a trust strategist. I have actually been a trustee since 2015, you guys, okay? And the way that I got into trusteeship was because of mentorship. So what I did was I went to a seminar, and in the seminar they started teaching us how to flip houses. So I was actually a registered nurse at that time, living paycheck to paycheck, working 5 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. I was exhausted, and I was only depending on what the hospital was paying me. And so I told myself there has to be a better way. I need to get a second stream of income. So that's why I went to that seminar, in order to get information on how I can start investing in real estate, how I can get a second stream of income so that I could support me and my 1-year-old baby at that time. And so I went to this seminar. They started teaching me in those 3 days how to flip houses. So I learned more in those 3 days about business and about investing in real estate than I did my entire life, right? And at that point, I was 25 years old. I was young. So I decided to sign up for mentorship. And within 6 months, I purchased my first property. So my mentor at that time told me that I needed to put that property in a trust, right? And he had thousands of properties, and all of them were in trust. So I was young, and I didn't want to take advantage. I didn't want to be in the position where somebody was going to take advantage of me. I didn't want to be in the position where somebody was going to take the property from me and sue me, right? Because the house was going to be renovated, anything could happen. It was pretty much a liability. If you guys are not in real estate, I want to tell you that real estate is a risky industry, right? It's a risky business. So that's why I decided to set up that trust, put that property under a trust, and I've been operating within trust ever since. So I've been a trustee ever since then. And now what I want to do is I want to show you the foundation of what a trust is so that you guys can make that informed decision, make the best decision for you and your family if a trust is something that you need within your structure, okay? So let me start this short little presentation here, and then after the presentation, we're going to start Q&A, okay? So any questions that you have, hold it on until the end so that I'll be able to answer them, okay? All right, so let's dive in. Let's see here. All right, so let's dive in. Hold on for me 1 second. All right, you guys, hopefully you can see my screen here. So sorry, I needed to pull this up. All right, so let's get started. So now the question is, what is a trust, you guys, right? I'm telling you guys that I actually started as a trustee in 2015, right? And the reason why was because of real estate investing, because I wanted to protect that asset. I did not want someone to be able to sue me and take that asset away. And so a trust is an entity, you guys. It is a living, breathing entity just like you. You are a living, breathing entity, okay? So anything that you can do as an individual, meaning you can buy a house, you can sell a house, you can buy a stock, you can sell a stock, you can build credit, you can do all these things, buy a car, all of these things, right? The trust can do the same thing. The trust can do what you can do as a natural person, which is extremely powerful, okay? When we talk about entities, think about LLCs, think about corporations, right? Those are entities as well, okay? And what you want to do is you want to be able to also use this type of entity just like you would an LLC, just like you would a corporation, okay? So it is an entity, that's one component of it, but the way that we structure this entity is by way of a contract, okay? So it is a contract and there's several different parts of this contract. This can be a public contract. This can also be a private contract, okay? You most likely want it to be a private contract. Why? Because you don't want anyone to know that you're associated with the assets that are inside of this trust entity, okay? So you want it to be a private contract. Now, there's several different parts to this contract, okay? So let me break it down for you. When we're talking about this contract, there's two main components. The first one is that the first one is the declaration, right? So that is where we're declaring what it is. What is this entity that we're creating? Are we creating an LLC, an LLP, a corp, or are we creating a trust? And then we're declaring what it is not, right? So we are declaring that it is not any of those other entities. So we're declaring that it is a trust and that it is not an LLC, that it is not a corporation, okay? So now that is the first component to the contract. The second component to the contract is the indenture, where we house the bylaws, where we're actually putting what we call provisions. The provisions are the rules and regulations of how you want this trust to be ran, okay? So how do you want the person who's controlling the trust to actually operate this trust? That is so important. So we also have to put that inside of the contract as well, okay? So once you have created this contract, you solidified it, you have all the rules, the regulations, the declarations, all this stuff, then you're able to legalize this contract. We'll go through those steps in just a moment. But let's go back to the structure. It is a contract. A contract has several different parties, right? So who are the parties that are involved in this contract, right? Well, for the trust, it actually has three main parties, okay? So the first one is the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust. So that is the individual who is actually establishing the trust for the benefit of somebody else. So that other individual or entity is the beneficiaries, okay? So the grantor is the creator. So that's one component of it. The second thing is that they're the initial donor, right? So when you're actually creating a trust, there has to be a consideration for this contract. That's one of the components in order for this to be a valid contract, okay? And that consideration is something of value that is in exchange for the creation of this trust, right? So now that thing that is of value is usually, it could be cash, it could be a property, it could be anything. But the grantor is the initial donor. So that's the individual who, one, has established the trust, but two, has put something of value into the trust to make the trust a valuable entity, okay? Now, let's talk about the second party involved, which is the trustee. So the trustee is the controller of the trust. So that is the individual who is going to control the assets that are inside of the trust, okay? Remember, this trust is going to own homes, cars, stocks, bonds, crypto, bank accounts. So there needs to be a representative for the trust. There needs to be an authorized signer for the trust. That individual is what we call a fiduciary, okay? And that individual is the trustee. So because the trustee has all of this power and control, they're able to dictate what happens to the assets that are inside of the trust, okay? They have all of the power. And if you were to consider which position is for you, you want to appoint yourself as the trustee. Why? Because you want to be able to control the assets that are inside of the trust. You want to be the individual who is signing on behalf of the trust, okay? Now, the trustee is representing the beneficiaries because ultimately the assets that are in the trust, once the trust is terminated, they go to the beneficiaries, okay? So with that being said, the beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust, okay? So those are the individuals who are going to receive the assets once the trust is terminated, if you decide that you want to terminate the trust. But you can continue to extend the trust many years, right? So let's just say you set it up for 100 years, then you can extend it for an additional 100 years and 200 and 300. That is how we begin to solidify the foundation that we need in order to build this generational wealth. You cannot say that you're building generational wealth if you don't have the tools, which is a trust, in order to make sure that the wealth does last generations to come, okay? So the beneficiaries, right? Those are the individuals that ultimately will be receiving distributions from the trust if there's any distributions that need to be made, okay? So there's several different types of trust, okay? And I'm going to break down a few categories so that you can better understand the severity of how many trusts, right? So there are hundreds and hundreds of trusts, right? You have to choose the right trust for you, but certain trusts fall within certain categories. So with that being said, the first one I want to tell you guys about is express versus implied, meaning that an express trust is a written trust. You're going to hear those terms when you start to do your research on trust, all right? So that means that it's in black and white, it's writing, it's in a contract form. That is the type of trust that you want versus an implied trust. An implied trust is an oral trust. That's an oral agreement, right? So that is a verbal agreement between the grantor and the trustee. That most likely will not hold up in court, okay? So you don't want an implied trust, you want an express. Now, the next type of trust is, or categories per se, is complex versus simple, right? So a simple trust is shorter in nature and the actual distributions are required, meaning that the trustee has to give distributions to the beneficiaries, right? On the other hand, you have complex trust, which is longer in nature, has more provisions, right, within the bylaws, and the distributions are not required. So that means that it is up to the trustee's discretion. The next category is discretionary versus non-discretionary, right? So non-discretionary means that whatever is inside of the trust is set in stone and the trustee has to operate it in that exact manner, okay? They do not have the discretion to be able to make decisions outside of what is in the trust. On the other hand, you have discretionary, which means that they do have the discretion to be able to make those types of decisions that they feel is in the best interest of the estate at that point in time, okay? So you have more flexibility and control with a discretionary trust. All right, so the next categories I want to tell you guys about is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust means that it has the state statutes and codes, right? So every single state has their own laws, okay? And they have state statutes and codes, and you can choose to put those state statutes and codes within your contract, which means that that trust is regulated by that state because the state statutes and codes are embedded inside of that contract. Usually a statutory trust is also registered either in the county or the state, okay? And it's usually public. So once it's registered, it's usually public, okay? So the last thing is that with a statutory trust, it can only be used in the state that it was created in, okay? So you don't really have any flexibility when it comes to that. You can only use it where you created it. On the contrary, you have non-statutory. A non-statutory trust means that it is operating in a common law jurisdiction, so they don't have the state statutes and codes embedded inside of this contract, which means that you can actually operate it in the entire nation versus just one state, okay? So you have more flexibility and it remains private. It doesn't have to be registered with the state, okay? The next category that I want to tell you about is revocable versus irrevocable, okay? So every single trust is going to fall within these two categories. So let's talk about revocable, okay? So when we're talking about revocable and irrevocable, we are only referring to one party with this contract. So that party is the grantor, okay? So with that being said, with a revocable trust, the grantor has revocability, which means that if they were to put an asset into the trust, they can revoke it or take it out. If they created the trust, they can terminate the trust at any point in time. If they appointed a trustee or beneficiaries, they can remove the trustee or the beneficiaries at any point in time, okay? So because they're able to make all of these changes during their lifetime while they are alive, then that trust, it's very flexible for them, but it puts the trust at risk. Why? Because creditors for the grantor can actually come after the trust estate, right? And if it were to come after the trust estate, then that means that one, it could go to litigation, right? And if it were to go to litigation, the judge could decide to pierce through the trust, right? If the judge decides to pierce through the trust, that means that the trust needs to be produced in court, which means that the entire trust estate is now a part of the public records, okay? So with that type of trust, unfortunately, your assets are not fully protected with a revocable trust because the grantor has so much control, so much power, and are able to make so many changes, okay? It's seen as an alter ego or as an extension and not entirely as a separate entity. On the contrary, you have an irrevocable trust. With an irrevocable trust, the grantor has irrevocability. So that means that the grantor has no power, no control to be able to do any of the following. So if they were to put property into the trust, they cannot take that property back out, okay? So that property would have to be sold back to them by the trustee. Right. If they were to appoint the trustees and beneficiaries, they cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries. If they wanted to make changes to the trust, they cannot make any forms of amendments or changes to the trust. If they wanted to terminate the trust, they could not terminate the trust, right? So because the grantor, which is the individual who created the trust, right, has no power and no control, the creditors cannot come after that type of trust. And if they were to try to come after the type of trust, it can end up in litigation, right? But with that type of trust, it's highly unlikely that it's going to be pierced by the actual judge, okay? Which is good. That's what you want. You want your trust to remain private. You don't want it to be pierceable in court because you want that sense of obscurity for no one to know the net worth of the trust, the assets that are in the trust, the beneficiaries, and things of that nature, okay? So let's keep moving on, okay? So next is how do we actually create these trusts, right? Because we already know that we want to trust. And the trust that I recommend, right, out of all of the categories that I just shared with you is a express trust that's in writing, a trust that is complex in nature, a trust that is non-statutory so that you're able to use it in the entire nation versus just one state, and a trust that is discretionary so that you're able to make decisions outside of what's in the bylaws, and an irrevocable trust that is not going to be pierced in court or end up in the public records, okay? So that's the type of trust that I recommend that you guys get. Now, but what you need to do is you need to determine if you know, what type of trust is best for you. Because like I told you, one, you need to do your research, okay? Just don't listen to what I'm telling you, right? You have to back it up. So do your research. The second thing is that everyone's financial situation is different. Everyone's family dynamic is different. Everyone's business is different. So you need to make the best decision for you and determine what's the best trust for you and your family, okay? So now with that being said, once you've determined the best type of trust for you, you want to move on to step 2, which is you need to determine a name for the trust, okay? So we're now decided that we're going to create this contract, this trust contract. What you need to do is you need to name the trust, right? Why? Because it is an entity. Just like how you have a name, the trust also needs to have a name, okay? Because it's going to be operating out here in society just like a person, okay? So with that being said, determine a name, but 2 things that you want to avoid. One is you want to avoid putting your first and last name in the trust, okay? So do not name the trust after yourself. If your name is John Doe, do not name the trust John Doe Trust, okay? So you want to remain private, and you want to make it appear as if you are not associated with the trust, okay? So you want to use initials, abbreviations, you want to use names that are not associated, right? So it could be, you know, Sunflower Garden Estate, right? Think about something that is not going to trace back to you, okay? Remember, we're trying to protect our assets and leave a legacy, okay? The second thing is that the name trust or the word trust doesn't have to be in the name, okay? So just also keep that in mind, because remember, we are in the business of being obscured, right? So we want to remain private, so we do not have to let people know that this is a trust entity that owns that house or that car or that bank account, okay? So you don't have to have the word trust in the name, okay? So now that you've determined what you're going to name the trust, you want to appoint the different parties in the trust. So who are the different parties? Remember, we spoke about it a couple of slides ago, okay? So the different parties, you have a grantor, right? That's the creator of the trust. If you're creating an irrevocable trust, just know that that person doesn't have any power or control, right? So you don't have to be worried about who you're going to appoint as your grantor if you want that type of trust, right? Which is the type of trust that I recommend. Why? Because it's what we call the bulletproof trust, right? It's going to hold up in court. So if you're choosing a grantor, that is going to be an individual like a neighbor or a best friend or a coworker, someone who's 18 and older and able to notarize the trust for you, okay? So determine who that person is, and then the next party is the trustee. So with the trustee, you want to appoint yourself as the trustee. Why? Because one, you want full control over the trust entity, you want to be able to sign for the trust, and you want to be able to control the assets that are inside of the trust. Next, you're going to appoint your beneficiaries. So your beneficiaries can be entities or natural persons, right? So they could be your children, or they could be LLCs and other trusts. And then next, you want to appoint the successor. The successor is an individual who's going to take over after you. So that is a successor trustee. Remember, we're building generational wealth. That means that this wealth is going to last many generations, which means it's going to outlast us, which means that we need to have the next person ready in line to be able to take over after us, okay? It is designed to outlive you. So you have to choose a successor that is at least 18 years or older, who actually wants to accept that position to operate a trust, okay? So now they are going to be the trustee. So they're literally going to take over whenever you retire, okay? Now, number 3 is we actually create the trust agreement. So remember, we are creating a contract, okay? So with the contract that we're creating, we want to, you know, be able to put all of our provisions in there. Those are our rules and regulations. One of the provisions that we focus on is spendthrift provisions. Why? Because by the second and third generation, the money or the wealth that you built and created is going to be gone. It's going to be dissipated, right? And so if you don't have a trust in place where you tell the second and third generation how they can spend the money, and you restrict them on what they can spend it on, then you need to be able to do that, right? Because then the money is not going to last. Let's just be honest, okay? So With that, you want to solidify your contract, make sure that you have those spendthrift provisions and all of the rules and regulations. After your contract is done, then what you want to do is you need to notarize it. It has to become legal, okay? So it needs to be notarized, and there's 2 signatures that are required. Remember, this is a contract where there's 2 parties involved. You have the grantor, you have the trustee. Both of those individuals need to sign in front of a notary. That's what makes this contract legal. Now you have a legal trust that you're able to operate. So you can operate it the minute that you notarize it. The first thing that you want to do is you want to open up a trust fund. That trust fund is a bank account. It could be any type of bank account, meaning a checking account, a savings account, a money market account, a cash management account, a brokerage account, right? Those are considered trust funds, and they can be with other financial institutions. They could be with a regular bank. They could be with a credit union. They could be with another financial institution like a brokerage, okay? So that is the type of account that you want, and you're gonna need 2 things. You're gonna need, 1, the certificate of trust. What is that? A certificate of trust is where you're actually proving the identity of the trust, right? So just like how you walk around with a driver's license, the trust also needs to walk around with ID, right? That is a certificate of trust to be able to prove, hey, this entity exists and this entity can buy a house. This entity can open up a bank account. This entity can purchase this vehicle, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is your EIN number. So that's your employer identification number issued by the IRS so that you're able to open up this bank account. So now what you want to do is you want to fund the bank account. You can fund that trust fund with whatever you want, right? So let's just say that the bank that you choose, their minimum is $100. You could fund it with $100, okay? So now that you have funded your bank account, your trust is funded at that point in time, you're able to operate it, right? So the second thing that you want to do after you open up that bank account is you want to transfer your assets into that bank account. Why? Because the entire point of us actually creating this trust is to protect our assets. But we actually have to put the assets inside of the trust in order for the assets to be fully protected, okay? There are so many times where I've seen it where individuals have created trust and they never put their house into the trust. They never put, their policies into the trust, things of that nature, okay? So you want to be able to do that. That's one of the most important things, okay? Now, with that being said, what does that look like, right? So let's just say that you have a house, you have a primary residence, right? With this primary residence, right now, it's in your personal name. What you're going to do is you're going to gift it to the trust. And that is going to be by way of a quick claim deed. And so now it's going to be redeeded into the name of the trust, okay? And so now what's going to happen is you're going to submit it to the county. They're going to remove you as the owner of that house, and they're going to put the trust as the owner of that house, okay? So now on the public records, right, because a lot of us, we don't even know that we're a part of the public records. We don't even know that you can just go down to the county website, put your first and last name, and every single house that you own in that county is, available for every single person to see, right? And so you want to remove yourself from that scenario, right? You don't want people to see that you own 15 houses in Jefferson County, okay? So the way that you're able to do that is by removing yourself, and putting the trust as the owner of that property, because now they don't know that you're the trustee, right? So your identity is concealed, and now on the forefront or on the public records, it is the trust that owns that asset, okay? So the 2 things that you need to do is, 1, you need to list it as an asset inside of the trust contract, and 2, you actually need to do the transfer with the county in the state where that property is located, okay? So let's continue on. So now, the reason why we are actually setting up a trust is for asset protection. So what can a trust actually protect you from, right? A trust can protect you from bankruptcies, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, from probate, right? Those are just to name a few. So let's talk about a few of them, right? First, let's talk about lawsuits, right? Because you do not want to wait until you're getting sued to decide that you want to protect yourself from a lawsuit, okay? Too many people wait until they are being sued, right? And so you want to protect yourself. You don't want to become what we call that low-hanging fruit for an attorney, okay? So what's going to happen is, let's just say that you have let's just say you have an LLC, right? And so LLC stands for what? It stands for Limited Liability Company. And with this LLC, if the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other half of that liability? So a lot of us, we don't think about that, right? We don't think that we are liable for our business, right? And so you have to go that far, because what if a client decides that they want to sue you? What if they decide that they want to sue your business? Well, if they decide that they want to sue your business, then that it's easy for them to be able to find you as the owner, because all they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website, and all they have to do is put the name of the business, and your name pops right up as the authorized member or manager of that LLC, right? So now they're able to find you because you're on the public records. And let's just say that they do follow through with this lawsuit, and it ends in litigation, and you end up losing that lawsuit, right? Then what can happen is, now there's a judgment that's on the business, and the business has to pay. But let's just say that the business can't fulfill the judgment. Then guess what happens, right? That judge can decide to pierce through that corporate veil, right? That protection that you thought you had with the LLC, and they can go after the authorized member, which is you. If they decide to go after you as the authorized member, then everything that you have in your name is fair game. Meaning that if you have W-2 income, then that could be garnished. If you have 7 figures in your bank account, that could be garnished, right? If you have a house, they could seize your house in order to pay for that judgment. So you don't want that to happen. You want to actually protect yourself as well as whatever assets that you have, you know, from this garnishment and from seizing, right? So what you want to do is you actually want to have the trust be that first layer of protection for you. So the trust is actually going to be the owner of the LLC, and then you are going to be the trustee of the trust. So now you're able to operate that LLC as the trustee of the business trust that owns the LLC, okay? So in the event that that business is sued, that LLC is sued, and they decide to pierce through the corporate veil, they're going to go after the business trust. And guess what? Guess what we said? We said that the trust has full liability. So they cannot come after you as the trustee. They can't come after the grantor or the beneficiaries, right? So the trust has full liability over that lawsuit, okay? Which is what you want, because now they're going to go after the trust. And because you are using that trust as a form of operating other entities, so let's just say you're using it as a holding company to hold all these assets, then you're not going to have a lot of funds. You're not going to have a lot of assets inside of that trust, right? So that means that that you are protected, okay? So that's the type of situation that you want to put yourself in, all right? Now let's talk about probate, right? Because probate is something that we don't know, right? A lot of us, we haven't heard of it. So let me ask you guys a question, right? So you have a primary residence, right? So you have a house that you live in. And this house that you live in, right? It's in your personal name. And let's just say that you had a will, right? And you didn't wake up tomorrow. The question is, how do you expect that house to be transferred from your personal name into the name of the trust, right? So I'm going to pause here and give somebody an opportunity to answer the question. So we got a couple people here. Anthony, Athena, Av, Bill. All right, I'm going to answer your questions in just a bit. I see some in the chat. But anyway, so the question is, you have a house in your personal name. You got a will. You said that you want your child to have the house. You didn't wake up tomorrow. How do you expect that house to be transferred from your name to your son's name? You can come off mute. You can guess. You can answer the question.
Is it probate court?
Yes, it is. It's probate court. Exactly. So now you already knew that you wanted your son or your daughter or both to inherit the house, right? But you're forcing them to go through probate court, right? And so the only way for that house to be transferred from your personal name into the name of your children is through a judge, right? It's that judge's decision. And ultimately, it is their decision. A lot of people, they just automatically assume and they think that, yeah, it just automatically happens because I have a will. But you have to understand that a will guarantees that you are going to end up in probate, right? A will end up in probate, okay? And the only way to avoid probate is by way of you setting up your own estate, which is you setting up a trust, okay? That's the only way to avoid probate. So all of us, we're going to end up in probate, okay? So let me quickly explain to you what the probate process is, okay? So 1 second. Okay, so the probate process, this is how it works, right? So you have these assets. You have a house, a car, you got 7 figures in the bank, you have all these assets, and then you have debt too, right? And so you didn't wake up tomorrow and you only had a will, right? So what's going to happen is those assets need to go somewhere, right? And so what's going to happen is the state that you live in, they are actually going to create an estate for you, right? So let's say your name is John Doe, right? They're going to create the John Doe estate, okay? So the state that you live in, if you live in Georgia, the state of Georgia is going to create the John Doe estate for you, okay? So now the second thing they're going to do is they're going to transfer all of your assets into that estate, okay? So the house, the car, the bank accounts, all of that is going to go into the estate, okay? And now your estate needs to be represented. So it needs to be represented by a probate attorney in probate court, okay? And what's going to happen is the judge, the first thing that the judge is going to do is going to pay off your debt. Whatever debt that you have, the credit card debt, the student loan debt, the medical bills, right? Hospital, nursing home, all these things, right? All of those things are going to be paid off first. So they're going to liquidate whatever is inside of your bank account, right? And they're going to pay off that debt. Whatever is left over is what your children get, right? But before they get the leftovers, the probate attorney needs to be paid. So that's going to be taken out of your estate. And the probate judge or the probate court fees also need to be paid as well. Okay, so your children literally get the leftovers of whatever inheritance you intended for them, okay? You don't want that to happen. Why? Because you already know that you want your children to inherit your assets, okay? You don't have to wait for the state of Georgia to do it. You want to be proactive and create your own estate, because once you create your own estate, once you set up your own trust, then guess what? You put all of your assets in the trust, you name your children as the beneficiary, and you avoid the entire probate process. Why? Because let's just say you didn't wake up tomorrow, right? Those assets that you have, the house, the car, the bank accounts, are owned by your trust. They're not owned by you, right? So you set up your own estate. You didn't wait for the state to do it for you. So regardless, you're going to end up with an estate anyways. If you do it yourself now while you are alive, or if you wait for the government to do it for you. So you have to choose which route you want to go in, okay? So let's just say that you was proactive. Let's just say that you wanted to have your affairs in order. Let's just say that you set up a trust, right? And you set up this trust, and now your house is owned by the trust. Your bank account with the 7 figures is owned by the trust. Your car is owned by the trust, right? Your crypto, everything, right? And you didn't wake up tomorrow. What happens? Your successor takes over, right? So the person that you appointed as the next trustee, they literally pick up where you left off, which is a beautiful process. And now guess what happens? Your children get to grieve. They get to grieve properly versus you dragging them through the probate court, and you sometimes making them fight each other for the assets, for the house and the car and the money. Right? Now they get to grieve properly because they just lost the most important person in their life. You don't want to drag your family through that, right? So you want to have your affairs in order. You want your family to avoid the probate process, okay? That's one of the beautiful things. The second beautiful thing is that your debt dies with you. Why? Because you had credit card debt in your personal name. You had let's just say medical bills in your personal name, right? Well, you didn't have any assets, and those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. So that debt dies with you, which is exactly what you want to occur. Why? Because now your children get to get their full inheritance versus 50 to 20 to less than that, right? I've seen it to where families are forced to move out of grandma's house because the judge has to sell the house because the judge has to pay off the nursing home. You don't want that to happen, okay? So I highly suggest that you guys have your affairs in order. So now let's continue on. I got 2 more slides for you, and then we can start the Q&A, okay? So let's move on to the wealth building formula, you guys, okay? So with the wealth building formula, this is how you're going to effectively build that generational wealth, okay? So I know that's what you're here for. You want to know, how can I effectively build this wealth, right? And this is how you're going to do it. So I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, credit, and invest, okay? I'm going to break this down for you in simple terms. So one, structure. Let's start with structure. Structure is so vitally important. Why? Because you have to be properly structured in order for you to, in order for you to maximize the wealth that you are creating. So we recommend this type of structure. One, where you have 3 trusts within your structure. You need to have multiple trusts within your structure, okay? Don't think that one trust is good enough. Why? Because you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. What if that one trust ends up being sued, right? So you want to have multiple trusts within your structure because these trusts are designed to do different things, okay? So the trust that we recommend is a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Why? Because you want to have 2 arms. You want to have a for-profit arm for those entities, and you want to have a nonprofit arm, right? That is going to officially maximize, the wealth that you are creating, okay? So let's start with the top. So with the business trust, right? You can actually, one, create this trust and you can operate it 2 ways. So one, you can operate it as a holding company to where it's going to hold your business entities, or you can operate it as a regular business. So let me just give you an example, right? So with the business trust, let's just say you want to operate it as a holding company. That means that it is designed to manage other entities, manage other trusts, LLCs, corporations, things of that nature, okay? So that's 1. 2, it is non-operational, meaning that it doesn't offer any products or services out there to society, to the community, okay? So what's going to happen is, remember that LLC that we were talking about? Well, remember we said that you're going to remove yourself as the authorized member. You're going to do an amendment with the Secretary of State, remove yourself, and you're going to add the business trust as the new authorized member of that LLC. So now that you have done that, the business trust is now the owner of that LLC and now able to operate that LLC. The LLC is the operational entity. So that is the entity that has the employees, that does the payroll, that has the products and the services, okay? So that is what that is, okay? And like we said, in the event that entity is being sued, they're going to come after the business trust, which is the holding company. So that if you're going to use your business trust as a holding company, 1, it's non-operational like we mentioned, but 2, you just want to use it to hold those assets. You don't want to have an exorbitant amount of cash in there or other assets like your personal assets, okay? We don't want to do any commingling, okay? We want to only use this entity for what it's designed for, okay? Which is to be a holding company or to be operated like a business, okay? So let's just say that you want to operate it like a business, then you can do that. So instead of you going out and creating an LLC, what you can do is You can create the business trust, and then you can go ahead and start doing real estate investing. You can go ahead and open up an e-com company, or, you know, sell digital products, or whatever kind of company that you want, right? You can operate it as a business trust versus as an LLC. So a business trust is actually superior to an LLC. An LLC is a statutory entity and a business trust is not, okay? So sometimes they work, not sometimes, but those entities do work very well together, like a marriage, okay? So I would tell you, get, you know, both versus either or. So now let's say that LLC, right, is bringing in $100,000. Well, if it's bringing in $100,000, what we're going to do is you are going to do a K-1 distribution, and you're going to distribute that money to the business trust, right? So what you can do is remember that business trust is now the owner of the LLC. So you'll do your normal deductions, and then whatever is the distribution for the owner, it'll go to the business trust. The business trust pays taxes, okay? The business trust files a 1041. You as a human file a 1040, okay? So the business trust is seen as a separate entity from you, versus an LLC where they make you file it on your 1040, right? If it's the way that it's designed, okay? And it's filed as a Schedule C. So with that being said, they see the business trust as a separate entity. It files a separate form, a 1041. All right, so now how is it taxed? Well, it's taxed anywhere between 10% upwards of 39%, depending on the income, right? So one of the beautiful things about this structure, or about this entity, is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. I'll say it again. You spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers, which is what you want, right? So whatever's coming in, you're going to be deducting operational costs, right? So what it is, what it costs to actually operate this business trust, right? So now you do your normal deductions, right? And then whatever's left over is what you're going to be taxed on, right? So the beautiful thing about a trust is that you can actually distribute that income. It's called distributable net income, and that money can now go to the beneficiary and be taxed to the beneficiary versus the entity. So if you distribute that money to the beneficiary, then you have a 0% tax liability on the business trust. So let's just say 100,000 came in and you did, you know, 30,000 in deductions, and now there's 70,000 left. You would have to pay 70,000. You would have to pay taxes on that 70,000, or you could distribute it to the family trust. So now let's just say that you distributed the entire 70,000 to the family trust. Beautiful, right? Because now we're starting over, right? So 70,000 in income came in to the family trust, right? And what do? We spend the money first and we're taxed on the leftovers. So now you've reset it to where now 70,000 came in, you're going to deduct your operating expenses. What does it cost to run a family trust? Well, one thing is, let's just say that you have assets, right? So let's just say one of the assets is a house, your primary residence. Well, everything that's associated with that house is an operating expense. So meaning utilities, meaning mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, all of those things, right? Groceries, anything like that, anything that's associated with that asset can be deducted as an operating expense, okay? So that's a beautiful thing, because now that 70,000, once we're done with our operating expenses, let's just say we've dwindled it down to 20,000, right? So we've already deducted 50,000. Now there's 20,000 left. With that 20,000, you would be taxed, right? You have to file a 1041. You're going to be taxed at 10% on that 20,000, right? And that's all good and dandy. Or another thing that you can do is you can actually donate to your tax exempt trust, right? So you can donate to your tax exempt trust, which means that that's another form of deduction, okay? So now let's just say, you know, 10, 15, or 20 of that money went into your tax exempt trust. Well, what's going to happen is that because it's exempt from federal taxes and it's coming in as a donation, you don't have to pay you don't have to pay federal taxes on any donations that are coming in. So if you're donating 15,000 of that money into the tax exempt trust, then you do not have to pay taxes on that, right? You're exempt. Why? Because there's something called the separation between church and state, okay? So once you have this type of trust that is designated as a 508c1a, it's a mandatory exception to not having to file for a 501c3. So with a normal nonprofit, you have to file for a 501c3, okay? But with this type of entity, you don't, because of the separation between church and state, okay? So as long as things are coming in as a donation, then you don't have to pay federal taxes on it. But if they're coming in as income, then anything over 5,000, you do have to pay taxes. You do have to file a 1041, okay? So it all depends on your record keeping, okay? So with this type of trust, you can label it whatever you want. You can label it as a faith-based organization, as a church, as a ministry, as any of these types of things, a charity, anything like that, okay? Now, one of the beautiful strategies that we use is, per the IRS, what you can do is you can actually donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to this organization, to your tax-exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So that means that if you are making $100,000 for the year in your W-2 job, and you decide I want to donate 60,000 of it to my tax-exempt nonprofit, then instead of you being taxed on 100,000, you're going to only be taxed on 40,000 because 60 of it went as a donation. Okay, so that's extremely powerful because you're going to be saving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that now you can allocate to other places like investments where you're actually going to build your wealth faster. Okay, so let's move on to the second one, which is credit, you guys. So with credit, you want to put yourself in a position to where you are using OPM, using other people's money. Who's the other people, right? The other people is the banks, okay? So two things. One, because you have a nonprofit within your structure, you will qualify for grants, okay? So keep that in mind. Two, you have a business trust within your structure. You can actually build business credit, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to apply for an EIN. That EIN is able to build or establish a credit profile with the credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and Dun & Bradstreet. And then at that point in time, you're able to now leverage 2 credit profiles versus 1, right? So that means that on the personal side, we have our credit, but on the business side, you're going to be able to access higher lines of credit, right? Because you have that business. So usually these banks will give you a higher line of credit because it's a business line of credit or a credit card, okay? So you want to be able to now leverage 2 credit profiles versus 1, okay? You want to be able to establish business credit so that you can leverage it, so that you can use that credit in order to build wealth with that credit, okay? So that's another thing that you want to keep in mind when we're talking about OPM, okay? So now let's move on to invest. So when it comes to investment, what you want to do is you want to acquire assets, okay? So the 2 assets that I recommend are 1, a cash value life insurance policy, and 2 is real estate, okay? So I have these 2 assets. I recommend that anybody and everybody have these 2 assets, okay? It can help you efficiently and effectively build wealth, okay? So the second thing is you want to put yourself in the position to where you are paying yourself first, okay? So I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. And the way that you want to do that is by using this cash value life insurance policy as a bank, right? So you're going to use it as your private money bank where you are able to put your money in there and it's going to grow and earn compound interest, okay? So this is the concept of you actually paying yourself first, right? So normally what happens is we get our W-2, right? We get paid, right? So let's just say it's Friday, we just got paid, we got paid $5,000, right? So what happens in this normal process? Well, in this normal process, who gets paid first? The IRS, right? So the IRS gets their withholdings first, right? Your income tax, your income. Then next is your Social Security, your Medicare, and your 401k contributions. So all of those organizations and agencies, they get paid first. And then you get the leftovers. Where do the leftovers go? They go straight into your checking account. So then who gets paid, right? Bank of America, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, all of these banks, they get paid next, right? And what do? Well, they are now borrowing your money out and becoming richer. Let's just be honest, right? So your money is just sitting inside of the bank, earning how much? 0.000003%, right? So you're literally getting no money on the income that you have coming in from your job, right? Or from wherever, from your business, right? So now you've already paid the bank and you put them in the position to where now they're giving out mortgages, they're giving out car loans, right? And a lot of us, we don't even know that the bank, we think that the bank is getting richer and making money off of these mortgages and car loans, but in fact, their number one investments are what we call BOLIs, bank-owned life insurance policies, right? So if the banks are doing it, don't you think that you also should be doing it? Think about that, right? So now you have this money that just came in, right? $5,000. And it just hit your checking account. What is the first thing that you do? Well, you go and pay your mortgage, you go and pay your rent, you go and pay your car note, put gas in the car, grocery bills, kids' tuition, all of these things. You pay all of those companies first, right? And then whatever's left over, let's just say you got $1,000 left over out of that 5,000, then what's going to happen is you just let it sit there in your checking account, right? And what is it going to accumulate? 0.0000 nothing, okay? So that is what you've been doing, and that is what is keeping us in the rat race, on this hamster wheel. You are not going to build wealth that way if you are not putting yourself in the position and changing your mindset to where you are paying yourself first. So the concept of you paying yourself first actually involves this life insurance policy, right? Why? Because specifically cash value life insurance policy, you could do whole life, you can do index universal life, right? Me, myself, I have 5 IUL policies, 5 index universal life insurance policies, and I absolutely love them, right? And I'll tell you about it in the next slide, in our last slide, right? I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but here what I want to say is that with this policy, it is seen as an asset, you guys. It is a liquid asset, okay? So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be utilizing it to accumulate wealth tax-free, okay? So that is what you want. You want to put yourself in a position to where you are actually utilizing this policy, because a lot of us, we think that life insurance is supposed to be used when we're dead, when in fact there's so many living benefits to having life insurance, right? And so we need to tap into those living benefits, okay? So one of the living benefits is building cash value. That cash value is actually going to be compounding, earning compound interest, right? So the way that that works is with an IUL specifically, what it does is it mirrors the market, right? So it mirrors let's just say it's the S&P 500, right? Standard & Poor's 500, top 500 companies in this country, okay? So what it does is the actual carrier is going to mirror the market, and whatever the market is doing, they are going to then match that and give you that interest on your cash value, right? So let's just say you have $10,000 in your cash value, right? And the market is doing 9%. They're going to match that and give you 9% 9% return on your cash value. So at that point, you get to now be accumulating wealth. You're actually going to be earning more than what you would have been getting by leaving your money in the bank, you guys, okay? So that is what it looks like when you are now changing your mindset to where you're paying yourself first, right? Now, eventually, this is not now, right? This is not now, this is not tomorrow, this is eventually, okay? Eventually, what you're going to do is you're going to be at the point where when you have money coming in, you are going to flow it into your insurance policy, and then you're going to be able to borrow it back out and use it, okay? So once you build up enough cash value, like I said, this is not overnight. You need to well oil your machine, okay? So this is a formula. This is not a get rich quick scheme, okay, you guys? So this is a formula that you're going to use where, let's just say $5,000 is coming in from your W-2 income, right? So instead of you paying your bills first, what you're going to do is you're going to flow that money into your cash value, right? But you already have to have cash value parked in there. Okay, so you're going to be flowing that money into your life insurance policy, and then what's going to happen is that money, let's just say that you need it, right? You need it in order to pay your mortgage. What you can do is you can borrow against that money, okay? So you can actually take out a loan from your cash value, but they're not going to take it out of your cash value. That money is going to come from the carrier, okay? So the carrier, they see your life insurance policy as an asset, right? They see it as liquid. And so they see that you have cash value that's available, right? And now you're able to borrow against it, right? It depends on your company and how much they allow you to borrow. For my company, they allow me to borrow upwards of 97%, right? So if you need the money, what you're going to do is you're going to request a loan, and that money is going to come from the life insurance company reserve. It's not going to come from your cash value. So the money that you have in your cash value, let's just say is 25K, that money is still inside of your cash value and is still earning compound interest, okay? So that's a beautiful thing because you're still getting more by it being inside of your cash value versus what you would get from Wells Fargo, okay? So that's a beautiful thing. So now you have borrowed against it to use it for whatever it is that you need it for, right? And the beautiful thing is that you don't have to pay that money back, right? It's a beautiful thing for you to pay the money back because you're going to be accumulating more compound cash value, more compound interest because you're going to be paying back the cash value. But at the end of the day, it's not required for you to pay that money back, right? Because it's going to be deducted from your death benefit, okay? Now, when you take out that loan, they're going to charge you interest, but it's going to be a small amount, right? It's not going to be this exorbitant, 10%. Usually it's 2%, 3%, something low. But if you're earning 9, 10% and they're charging you 3% for the loan, then you are going to make the difference. Let's just say it's 7%, right? So that is a beautiful thing. So you want to now think about paying yourself first. That is how you're going to build wealth, okay? Now, the second thing I want to tell you guys about is actually investing in real estate, right? Because what you want to do is you want to put the trust in position to where it is now being able to have another stream of income, right? So you want it to be able to sustain itself. You don't want to put yourself in a position to where you're pouring in your W-2 money or your business income or cash flow into that trust, right? So you want the trust to accumulate its own assets, sustain itself, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to acquire assets. So when it comes to real estate, what's going to happen is you are going to start acquiring investment properties, and you want to do that by getting a debt service ratio loan, right? So that is specifically for investment properties, and usually they give you 75 to 80%, right, of whatever the purchase price is. So now you need 20%. Where is that going to come from? Well, remember earlier we said OPM. Put yourself in the position to where you're utilizing OPM. That means that you're using other people's money. That means that you have now put yourself in a position to where you are building business credit, you have lines of credit, and you have credit cards that you can now use for the down payment for real estate, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to get a DSCR loan for 80%, and then you're going to use your business credit card for the other 20%. And now you have just purchased property under the name of your trust for 100%, right? So that means zero down for you, and you have 100% financing, right? So now that cash flow is coming in, right? And what you're going to do with that cash flow is you are going to funnel that cash flow into your cash value policies, right? You can funnel that cash into your cash value policies. You can then borrow it back out. You can service your debt, okay? So think about ways that you are able to utilize your insurance policies, your real estate, and now you are able to generate cash flow for your trust in order for you to build wealth, okay? So these are strategies that you can use in the future when you decide to actually establish these types of tools. Now, let me wrap it up. I have 2 more slides for you. So the first one is how to actually transfer wealth, right? So we have just learned about how to set up these types of trusts, how to create it, right? So now, how do you actually transfer the wealth, right? You want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. I'm going to say that again, nice and slow. You want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. So that is the definition of stewardship. That is what you want. You want to be a good steward of your wealth, right? So you want to be able to control the direction of where your wealth is going. You're going to do that by utilizing a trust versus ownership. That is what you're operating in right now. You are operating in ownership versus stewardship, right? So with ownership, you are the proud owner of that house or that car or that that bank account, right? But you have to understand and put yourself in the mind frame of that house is going to outlive me, right? So if you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So what you want is the ability to control that house while you are living. And you can do that by way of stewardship, by putting that house into a trust and you being the trustee and continuing to control and operate that house. So that is the position that you need to put yourself in if you're intentional about building generational wealth. So now that you have set up a trust, what does that look like? What does transfer of wealth look like, right? Well, with that trust, you are going to create TCUs, trust certificate units. Those are equivalent to stock certificates. So just like how a stock certificate represents ownership in a company, TCUs represents beneficial interest in a trust. So for example, let's just say you set up a trust tomorrow. Well, that trust is now going to, once you fund the trust fund, is going to create 100 trust certificates. That 100 trust certificates is going to represent 100% beneficial interest in the trust. What does that mean? That means that now what you're going to do is you're going to start issuing those TCUs to your beneficiaries. Let's just say I'm one of your beneficiaries. You give me 25 TCUs. That means that I have 25% beneficial interest in this trust, okay? So let's just say the trust is worth $1 million. Well, that means that I have an equivalent of a ownership, a beneficial interest of $250,000, okay? So that is what that looks like, okay? Now, once again, if you didn't wake up tomorrow and you have all of your assets in a trust, there's no transfer that needs to happen because all of the assets are going to remain in the name of the trust. Everything's going to remain intact. There's nothing that needs to happen. The house is going to remain in the name of the trust. The bank account with the 7 figures is going to remain in the name of the trust. The car is going to remain in the name of the trust. The stocks, the crypto, everything. There's no transfer that needs to happen. Why? Because you already had your affairs in order. That's the position that you need to put you and your family in. Let's talk about preservation. So with preservation, a lot of us, we don't think about it. We don't think about how can I preserve this wealth, make sure it lasts 200-300 years, right? All we think about is, oh, I want to make the $1 million today. Okay, you want to make the $1 million today, but how are you going to keep the $1 million? How are you going to make sure that the $1 million lasts the third and fourth generation? How many times have we seen it to where athletes, celebrities, famous families, lottery ticket winners, they get all of this wealth instantaneously within 2-3 years, broke. Why? Because they didn't have these tools in place. What are the tools that I'm talking about? The trust, as well as the cash value life insurance policy. I'm not talking about just any policy. I'm talking about a cash value life insurance policy. So you need that component. So now, what's going to happen, right? Well, you need these tools in order to effectively preserve your wealth, right? So what's going to happen is the trust is going to be the owner of the life insurance policy. The trust is going to be the payer of the life insurance policy. The trust is going to be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. And the trust is going to take out a policy on you. You are going to be the insured, right? In the event that anything happens to you, guess what? The trust gets paid. Why? Because you're what we call human capital. You are what we call a human asset. The trust has a lot of assets. The trust has a house, a car, cash money, but then the trust also has a human asset, which is you, the trustee, which is the beneficiaries. So the trust needs to also protect those assets, which means that the trust needs to take out a policy on you and the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries. That is how you're going to ensure that the legacy that you're creating today and the wealth that you're building today actually lasts generations and generations and generations. This is the only way that you're going to ensure that. Why? Because in the event that something happens to the human asset, which is you, the trust is going to be compensated for that loss. So if you decided that you didn't want to wake up tomorrow, guess what? And you had a $2 million death benefit, that payout is going to go directly to the trust fund. That death benefit is going to go directly to the trust fund. And guess what? The trust fund is replenished with $2 million, right? So that is so vitally important. This is one of the most important things that you need from this entire presentation, right? Which is the preservation of wealth, okay? So, like I said, the trust is going to ensure every single person associated with the trust, meaning you, your co-trustees, your beneficiaries, and the trust is designed to ensure every single future beneficiary, okay? So let's just say that there's a beneficiary that was born, right, today. When that baby is 30 days old, the trustee is now going to put a policy, a cash value life insurance policy. Let's just say it's an IUL policy, right? On that baby. So now the trust is paying into that policy. That policy is building cash value. And now we have what we call a trust fund baby, right? And let's normalize trust fund babies, okay? Because it's a beautiful thing. Everybody needs to be a trust fund baby, including me. So with that being said, now you have this trust fund baby. And throughout the years, like we said, the trust had been paying this and building up this cash value. So let's just say fast forward into the future, that trust fund baby, which is a beneficiary of this trust, is now 18 years old. They need a car. They're going off to college. Normally, what can happen is they'll go to the dealership, they'll pull their credit, they'll get into a vehicle loan with high interest, and now they're starting to pay $900 a month to the dealership. Or what they can do is they can go to the trust and they can request a loan. Why? Because the trust can actually issue loans to the trustees and the beneficiaries, as well as receive loans from the trustees and the beneficiaries. So let's say that that beneficiary went to the trust estate and said, I would like to receive a loan request a loan for $30,000 so I can buy my first car. Okay, no problem. So guess what? Now the trustee has them sign a promissory note. and issues them a check for $30,000. And now what is going to happen is that trust fund baby is now going to start paying the trust. So instead of them paying the dealership $900 a month and making the dealership richer, what they're going to do is they're going to start paying the trust $300 a month with only 1 or 2% interest. So now the trust is earning interest, which is good, right? But let's just say 2 years down the line, this trust fund baby decides to default and doesn't want to pay the trust anymore than $300 a month. Well, it was actually a risk-free loan. Why? Because that money did not come from the trust fund. That money actually came from that beneficiary's life insurance policy, because what happened was the trustee actually contacted the carrier and borrowed from the policy, okay? So took out a loan from that policy, and that money came from the carrier's reserve, right? From that company's reserve, right? So that company now issued a check to the trust fund for the $30,000. And then from there, that money hit the trust fund and the trustee wrote a check to the beneficiary for the $30,000. So it's risk-free because that money is going to be deducted from the beneficiary's life insurance policy from their death benefit, okay? So that is how you're going to put yourself in a position to where now you and your family are safe, risk-free, and actually building wealth efficiently and effectively, okay? So with that being said, you want to put yourself in a position to where now you are actually breaking generational curses, right? You are that generational curse breaker in your family, and you're changing the trajectory of your family. So with that being said, these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? That is going to teach you how to use insurance and trust together as a perfect marriage. Then The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, that is going to teach you about trusteeship and how to actually effectively operate a trust. Then Family Wealth, that is going to teach you guys how to actually run your family like a business organization. And then the last one is The Complete Book of Trust, which is going to teach you guys about the different types of trust, okay? So what I want to do is I want to show you guys a quick video of a trustee that took action on the information that I provided with you guys tonight, okay? So I have dropped a lot of gems. I gave you guys a wealth of knowledge, and the only thing that I hope for is that you actually take action on the information that I provided. So here's a quick little video.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. Don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions. Things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you, and thank you, Mon.
All right, so that is some great information. And now what I want to tell you is let's work together. So you guys, I actually have a program where I teach you this information, okay? I teach you how to set up your own trust so that you can actually get your affairs in orders. So I have 3 offers. The first one is do it yourself. With the do it yourself, it is a course. So you do it independently. And what you're going to get is 42 video modules where you're going to actually learn how to set up these trusts, right? So you get the trust templates, you watch the modules, you learn how to customize and put the rules and the regulations that you need in order to set up your own estate, okay? You get lifetime access to the course, plus you get access to all the resources and ebooks. So the ebooks are the books that I just mentioned, The Art of Passing the Buck, What Would the Rockefellers Do, right? You get access to those ebooks inside of the program. Some of those ebooks are worth or cost over $800, right? And you get access to them in the program. The next thing is resources, right? So we provide you with all the templates that you need in order to file your taxes, in order for you to be able to do your board meetings, in order for you to be able to transfer your assets like your house, your car, your businesses. We provide you with all of that documentation and templates that you need to actually get it done, you guys, okay? And then we also have a private Facebook community as well as a Telegram chat where you guys get access to the other trustees in the program so that you can network with like-minded individuals who are trustees just like you, operating within trust, protecting their assets, okay? So we have over 450 people in our community to date that you have access to, that are like-minded, okay? So the actual do-it-yourself is only $997. The second option is done with you. With done with you, you get everything in do-it-yourself, meaning you get the course, you get the resources, ebooks, and the chat in the community. But then you also get to do it with me, right? So that means if you need accountability, right, and you need assistance and you're handheld, then we'll do it together. So you get access to be able to the workshop, right? And so it's 1 week long. It's Monday through Friday. So on Monday, we set up the business trust together, and then we dive into Q&A. On Tuesday, we set up the private family trust together, and then we dive into Q&A. On Wednesday, we set up the nonprofit trust together, and then we dive into Q&A. On Thursday, we get our EINs from the IRS, and then we learn about business credit and business funding from our guest speaker, which is our funding specialist. And then we do board meetings so that we know about which banks we're going to open up our trust fund with. And we do the promissory notes so that we can actually document how much we're going to fund the trust, okay? And then lastly, on Friday, we actually get to transfer our assets together. So if you have a house, we do the quick claim deeds together. If you have a car, we do the bill of sales together. And if you have a business, we do the business purchase agreements. And then we do the amendments with the Secretary of State. And lastly, we learn about the infinite banking from our infinite banking specialist that is going to come in and teach you guys about these cash value life insurance policies and how you could utilize them in order to build wealth with them, with the trust. Okay, you guys? So you get access to the workshops, and it's like I said, it's done on Zoom. So it's me and you together, me, you, and a group of other trustees. And this is definitely the best option because you guys get to actually be in this space where other people are asking questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to know, right? So it's super powerful. Plus you get hands-on assistance. You still get access to the course, but you get that sense of security that your trust is being set up the right way. Plus you get a one-on-one with me after the workshop, okay, guys? And all of the recordings and lifetime access. So every single time that we do a workshop, which is every 4 weeks, you guys get access to the workshops, okay? So that's only $2,500. And then the last option is do it one-on-one, where you get private sessions with me one-on-one. You get individualized support, extended support. You get my, cell phone number, and we actually meet on Zoom. And we get to actually set up your trust, privately, and this is for individuals who have multiple assets, multiple businesses, have a complex schedule, or they want that extended support, right? And so the private sessions are only $10,000. So you guys get to choose which one is right for you, your family, and your business, okay? And for only for the people who are on this call tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer 20% off, okay, in the next 24 hours. And all you have to do is use the discount code TRUST20. You use that code and you're able to get 20% off the prices that you see here on the screen. So this is my contact information if you guys have any questions. So you can call this community number, and either me or somebody on my team will answer. You can visit the website, wealthytrustee.com, or you can send us an email and also connect with us on social media. 2 more things. One, I want to show you what a trust looks like so that you can better understand the contracts that I'm talking about. 2, I want to show you what the course looks like, and then we'll dive into Q&A, okay? So hold on tight. All right, so this is what a trust looks like. This is an example of a contract, okay? So like I said, this contract is going to hold up in court and it's going to protect you and your assets and your business, okay? So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing, okay? So if you feel like you are able to, do it independently, then go for the course, because what I do is I break down every single paragraph of the trust, okay? So that you guys can better understand this contract, what you're operating, and being able to, to defend it, okay? So like I said, everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing, for your business and your family, okay? And then I will show you what the course looks like. So for the course, this is what you actually get. So once you sign up, you get access to the course instantaneously, and it's 43 lessons here. And so one, you have your introduction, and then the first thing that we do is we go into trust entities. So you learn what is a trust, the different parties involved, like the grantor, trustee, beneficiary, the different types of trust. Then you learn about the tax exempt trust and how to set it up and how to apply for your tax exempt EIN number. Then you learn about the private family trust and the different bylaws and how to do your board meetings. And then you learn about the business trust and its indentures and the certificate of trust. Then you learn about tax strategies, like some of the tax strategies that I was telling you guys earlier in this call. So you learn about how to operate tax exempt and the difference between the three trusts that you have, okay? And then you learn about asset protection. So first we have you take an inventory of your asset so that you can know which assets are going to stay in the trust and which assets are actually going to remain out of the trust. And then you learn how to open up a bank account, brokerage account, how to transfer your house, your car, your policies, your businesses, things of that nature, how to actually run a board meeting. You don't even know, people are out here operating LLCs and all in corporations, and they don't even have board meetings, right? So we teach you the right way to operate this type of entity. And then next we go through wealth creation, where we show you how to build business credit for your business trust, how to invest it in the stock market, and how to set up your infinite banking, as well as how to build a how to create a legacy crest for the legacy that you're creating. And then here are all the resources that we promise you, as well as all of the ebooks, okay? So that is it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that you guys might have. I know I went through a lot of information, so I'm going to look in the chat and you can just either come off of mute or you can raise your hand, ask any questions that you might have. So we have, about 10 minutes for Q&A. Any questions? I see some in the chat. Let's see here. Any questions?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Here's my question. The IUL, it goes into what is considered the business trust, or that should that be something that goes into the family trust?
The IU, so it depends on you, right? So if you so primarily you want to put it in your family trust.
Okay.
Sometimes you need multiple policies, and so you have to understand that if you are the key person in your business, you also want some form of insurance for yourself. If you're the primary breadwinner, if you're the CEO, things of that nature. So some people, they will also set up an IUL and put it under the business trust, or they'll set up a whole life or a term and put it under the business trust as well. So it doesn't have to be just one, it could be both.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey,
So
good evening. How you doing?
go. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. This is Nick. I don't know if you can see me.
Oh, yes, I can see you now, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. Uh, and thank you for everything you're doing. I just learned a lot. I was writing down a lot of notes. It's pretty much a lot, so I can't really ask a lot of questions. But I just wanted to know, as far I'm still young and stuff like that. I do have my own insurance policy and stuff like that. But is this something where I would have to have probably, majority of my assets already put together to start, or can I just start one trust and then after that, once I start getting like momentum, can I do another trust?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you could start where you are. So a lot of people, they start with one trust because they don't have that many assets, and then they can move on to establish the second and the third trust. So for example, if you don't have a business, then you probably don't need to use the business trust right now. So you might want to just start with the family trust, which is your personal, your personal assets. Okay. So you'll start with the family trust. You can put your life insurance policy in there. So all you would have to do is contact your carrier and let them know that you want to change the ownership from yourself to the trust. Okay. And that's how you're able to put that asset into the trust. And then you could just start from there until you're able to build up that momentum, like you're saying, and build up that wealth like you intend on doing, and you acquire more assets. So you're going to eventually, trust me, you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket. Eventually, you're going to have multiple trusts.
Gotcha. And then my second question is, because I do have a business, I wanted to know as far as for, like you were stating, as far as for building the trust business, like credit, does it work based off of like a personal guarantee, or can it just be built off straight of the trust?
It could be built straight off of the EIN. So it's going to be, the business credit is going to be built off of the EIN. It's faster for you to build business credit if you want to do the PG personal guarantor. But if not, then you can just build it straight off of the EIN. So you'll go kind of like what we call like the slower route, where you'll establish trade lines and you'll get net 30 accounts with vendors, and then you'll generate that paydex score. And then from there, based off of your income or projected income, you're able to get like credit cards and build up your profile.
Gotcha. And then my last question, and majority of everything is going to be based off upon like myself. Like I'm not going to have like a lawyer or anything like that. It's going to be me, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So you get to so you have the opportunity to set up your contract the way that you want. Okay. So we show you the right way to do it. You can customize it. You can add whatever you want into it. So for the example that I like to give is inside of the trust that we give you, it doesn't talk about crypto. It doesn't talk. So if you do crypto, then you're going to want to customize it and put crypto
Right.
in there. Okay, so whatever applies to you and your family or your business, you want to customize it and put those things in there, okay?
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I respect everything you're doing.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you too. Thank you. All right, who's next? I know I have a question in the chat. It says, when it is a statutory trust, does that mean that it can only be enforced in that state? Yes, that's correct. So that means that you cannot use that trust anywhere else but in the state that you created it for a statutory trust. That's why you really don't want a statutory trust, because it's very limited, okay? That means that now you have to create another trust in another state if you wanted to use it somewhere else, okay? So that's a good question. The next question is, does the IUO go into the business or the private? So you can put it into the private family trust, and you can also put it into the business trust if you want to. But if you only have one policy, put it into the family trust first. The next, anybody else? If not, I'm going to keep going through the chat. So
Yeah.
go for it. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. This is Miss Ryerson.
Hi, Miss Ryerson. How are you?
I'm good.
Looking
My
phenomenal.
my question is, God forbid if you're the person that you have as your trust, was your trustee over the, over your account. God forbid something should happen to that individual, and you have not designated another one. What happens at that point with the trust itself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So two things. One, if you have a board of trustees, which is other people that are what we call the governing body that are there to assist you in operating the trust, they can appoint a trustee. If you have a protector, which is another position that you'll learn about, If you have a protector, the protector can appoint a trustee. So the protector is designed to do things for the trust that's in the best interest of the beneficiary, okay? If you don't have a protector and if you don't have a board, then the beneficiaries are going to have to take the trust to court in order for there to be a court-appointed trustee, because the beneficiaries are not able to have any power or control to be able to appoint a trustee.
Okay, so does that fall into the irrevocable or the revocable, you know, that type of situation, since it has to go to court?
So it's applicable for all types of trusts. If there was a point in time where there's no acting trustee and the trust is not terminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking that good question.
You're welcome.
So I see a question that says, do you have to record or register the irrevocable non-statutory private trust? No. So if you have a private trust, it can remain private. It's a private contract. You do not have to register it. It is optional. So I personally don't recommend that you register. I recommend that you keep it private so that people don't know who your beneficiaries are or what assets you actually have in the trust. The next question is, how do you lower your W-2 taxes with the trust? So, what you want to do is you want to donate up to 60% of your W-2 income to the trust, the tax exempt trust. So that's how you're going to lower your taxes. So let's just say that you make, you know, 50,000 a year, right? Well, what you can do is you can donate up to 30,000 of that 50,000 into the actual tax exempt trust, and then now you're going to be taxed on 20,000 versus the whole 50. So that is the position that you want to put yourself in, which will lower your taxes and you will get a higher return, which means that you can put that money somewhere else. Next is, can a trust buy an IUL, and how can you refinance your property in a trust if you choose to do so? So the trust can get any types of loans or lines of credit. So the trust can qualify for a mortgage, but you have to make sure that you're able to show proof of income that the trust is able to get approved for this mortgage, okay? Because if you're applying for a mortgage with the trust, you need to be able to prove that the trust can actually afford the monthly payments. So that can be by way of tax returns, or you could be showing bank statements as well in order to show proof of income that the trust is able to either do the refinance or take out a mortgage or a home equity line of credit. Now, can the trust buy the IUL? Yeah. So the trust is the owner of the policy. So that is actually considered an operating expense for the trust. And we do have the verbiage inside of the trust contract to be able to cover that those expenses are what we consider operating expenses for the trust. Okay. So so the trust can actually do the policy application. So you can put on the application the actual trust, and the trust is going to take out the policy on you, which is the insured. So the trust is going to be insuring your life. So if anything happens to your life, the trust is going to be compensated. All right. And if there's an active mortgage on the house, can you still quitclaim deed the trust? Yes, you can. So you can still quitclaim deed the trust even though you have a mortgage, and the mortgage is going to remain intact. The mortgage is still going to remain in your name, and it's going to remain on your credit. And it's going to be safe. So all you have to do is contact the mortgage company to let them know that the payments are going to be coming from a authorized representative or person, which is the trust. All right. Any questions?
Yes, Christina, I have a question.
Hi, Connie.
Hi, sweetie. If you're entering as a husband and wife unit and
Yeah.
the trustees, do the trustees go in as a unit, or you have to be it's two separate? In other words, do you have to just pick one person as a trustee, or do you go in as a unit?
Oh, you can, so both of you guys can be trustees, and so you're going to be co-trustees. So when you're setting up the trust, you will have one founder trustee, which is the first trustee, and then that individual is going to appoint a secondary trustee, which is going to be the co-trustee or the second person that's going to be operating the trust, and both of you guys are going to be equal. So every single trustee is equal, meaning that you guys can do anything and everything, on behalf of the trust without even getting permission from the other person.
Let's see. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So, one person said, which company are you using at 97% of your insurance, please? So it depends on the carrier. My carrier is Emeritus. But I didn't go directly through Emeritus. So you have to actually go through an actual, I recommend that you guys go through in a specialist that's able to set up these policies exactly the way you need it. To where you're building a high cash value, low death benefit, if your goal is to build as much cash value as possible. So that's what my goal was, and that's how I set up my policy, okay? And so when I borrow from my cash value, I'm able to literally take 97 to 98%, okay, of whatever's in my cash value. They will lend it to me. So my cash value stays in there, but they're going to issue me a loan and put a direct deposit into my bank account with whatever the maximum is. So they're going to let you know what the maximum is. So for me, let's just say that there was 100,000 in there. They would give me $98,000 available for me to borrow against. Okay. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the IUL policies, about the whole life, about the cash value, then what I want you to do is contact my insurance specialist. So I have her information here inside of the chat. Do you see where it says book a call with our insurance partner? So I'm actually going to copy and paste this so that you can get all of your insurance questions answered by our specialist. And everyone's situation is different. So you really want to meet with her so that she is able to see your specific situation and what works well for you because of your financial status and because of your family status as well. So if you have a spouse, children, things of that nature, there's so much factors that go into it, okay? Jose, you're welcome. So let me see if I have any other questions. Is there any other questions? Because right now I'm just going through the chat. Is there any other questions? So I see another one from Jose. It says, do you have to keep the TCUs to get your 25%? Yeah, you can't give away you shouldn't give away your TCUs. So your TCUs can be inherited by your children. But what you're going to do is you're going to receive distributions. So you could receive, 10,000 a month, 10,000 a quarter, 10,000 a year. So you're going to receive distributions from the trust based off of how many TCUs you have. And in the event that the trust is terminated, then you're going to get your quote unquote 25%. Or once the trust is due to expire, if you don't want to continue to be a beneficiary, then you could cash in your TCUs. They'll give you your 25%, and then you are now excluded from the trust. So there's a couple different ways of doing it, but the entire point is for you to keep your TCUs, for you to remain a beneficiary receiving beneficial interest, and for you to have your children inherit your TCUs. So go ahead.
What is you said the EIN, what does that stand for? What does that mean?
Employer identification number, and that is a 9-digit number that is issued by the IRS for your trust.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You are so welcome. All right, guys. Two things I want to mention. One is for everyone that's on this call, you guys can enjoy 20% off if you guys take action in the next 24 hours. So you want to use that discount code TRUST20 when you go to the website. The website is wealthytrusty.com, okay? So you go in there, you choose if you want to do the course or the workshop or the private sessions, and then you put in the discount code. It automatically wipes off 20%, and then you're able to go ahead and check out. If you guys want to lock in the price for the 20% off, then what you want to do is you want to put a deposit down today. And the deposit is only $200. So if you want to lock in the 20% and you don't know, you don't have the whole entire 20 you don't have the whole entire amount, then go ahead and put in the deposit for the $200. We'll hold your spot for the 20% off, and then you can start a payment plan. So we do have payment plan options available if that's what you want. You will also see it on the website as well. So you can break it up into 3 payments, 4 payments, 5 payments, just depending on what works for you. But if you want to lock in the 20% in the next 24 hours, then you want to use the deposit link. So it's inside of the chat. So if you are considering it, go ahead and copy the link that's inside of the chat, because it's not going to be available after I close this Zoom call. All right, let's see what other questions I have. Is there any other questions? Because I'm just going through the chat right now. Is there any other questions? All right, so the next one that I see in the chat, it says, you said you have 5 IULs. What are the difference? Why do you have multiple? What process do they serve if differing? And where are they placed in the multi-trust structure? That is such a good question. So remember what I said. I said that the trust is going to insure every single person associated with the trust, all of the human assets. So it's not just only me. So I have 5 IUL policies, but these are not my policies. So these 5 IULs belong to the trust. Which trust? The private family trust. Now the question becomes, who is the insured? So these 5 policies, they are not only insuring my life, they are insuring the other people involved in the trust. So I have 1 IUL policy that is insuring my life. The second IUL policy is insuring my co-trustee. The third IUL policy is insuring my beneficiary that's 12 years old. The fourth IUL policy is insuring my beneficiary that is 5 years old. And the fifth IUL policy is insuring my beneficiary that is 4 years old. So that's why my trust owns 5 policies, you guys. So that's the reason why I have multiple, or that's why the trust has multiple, because there's different insurers. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind, and that's really the way that you want to do it. You want to have your trust insure everyone that's involved in the trust. So not only you, but also the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries. Okay, so that was a really good question. So now someone had asked about the mastermind. So tomorrow we are going to have a master class, okay? And the master class is going to be for our community members. And in the master class, you're going to be learning about how to actually how to set up offshore accounts. So if you're interested in having offshore accounts, which are international accounts in other countries and islands, and the benefits of that, then you want to join us so that you can actually get access to that masterclass, which is tomorrow at 7. The next question is, let's see here. I think that's it. Any other questions? I know that it is 4 minutes to 9 p.m. I kept you guys kind of late. I usually try to keep this to 90 minutes, but we went 2 hours strong. But you guys are absolutely amazing. So is there any other final questions? Do you guys have the links? So what you want to do is, if you guys want the recording, you're going to go to YouTube. So we are live streaming on YouTube right now. So what you want to do is you want to go to our YouTube channel and actually subscribe, and then you're actually able to watch this entire webinar again from start to finish if you wanted to take any notes, okay? So go to the link that you see in the chat, subscribe, and then you're able to watch this entire replay again. And if you want to put in the deposit so that you're able to lock in the 20% discount
Yes.
today, then you see the link in the chat. So it says deposit, and then you have a link right there. So it says buy.stripe.com. So that is the link for the $200 deposit. All you have to do is just put $200 down today, and you lock in that 20%, and then you can pay, you can make payments, or you can pay later. Whenever you want, whenever you get the money, we're flexible, okay? So with that being said, do I have any final questions, comments, concerns? Because
I'm sorry.
go ahead, go
Which
ahead.
one did you say? I'm trying to send the 200. Which link should I copy again?
Do you see the one that says deposit inside of the chat?
Okay, look, Neffy, help me. She said the one that says deposit. No, I went too far. Okay.
It's
I
all
think that's it.
it's all the way at the bottom.
Oh, it's at the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't go down further. Oh, I see it. Okay, do it. Sorry, I have to ask my daughter to do
All right.
it.
Well, congratulations for deciding to take that leap of faith and and decide to actually set up your estate. And I want to empower everyone. Get your affairs in order. Do not wait for the government to create your estate for you. Okay, now you need to be intentional, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be changing the trajectory of your kids' life. Now your children are going to be raised, and your grandchildren are going to be raised as trustees. And now they're going to be able to control the trust and grow the wealth that you are establishing right now today. So you want to be able to definitely create your own estate, and don't wait, okay? So tonight was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. I look forward to helping you in this journey of you building out your legacy for you and your loved ones. And I'm available. So send me an email. You can look me up on Instagram or Facebook, and then you can also call us and tune into our videos on YouTube. All right. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
You're
all paid
welcome.
up,
Thank
when's the
you.
next class?
The master class is tomorrow at 7.
No. If you're all paid up for the program, when's the next?
Okay, it's June 24th to the 28th. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a really good question. Thank you so much, Connie. So if you guys are enrolling in the workshop, the next workshop is June 24th to the 28th. We're going to be going Monday through Friday, and we're going to do 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? Monday through Friday. So it's going to be a wealth of information. I have a bunch of guest speakers that are going to come in and teach you about funding, as well as the infinite banking concept with the cash value life insurance policies, okay? So we have a lot prepared for you guys that decide to do done with you with the workshop. Like I said, go ahead and lock in the dates for June 24th to the 28th. Thank you, Connie.
Okay.
All right, guys.
How much was that workshop again?
The workshop dates?
Yeah. No. How much?
Oh, okay. So the price is 2,500, and if you guys lock in the 20% off, then it is only 2,000.
Okay.
And you get lifetime access to the workshops, which a lot of our community members do, because you want to be able to come to all of the workshops, because retention is really going to be your best friend, because once you hear it multiple times, you're really able to understand the trust that you are operating, as well as be more comfortable with the contents of the actual trust contracts. All right. And then you also can upgrade if you want. So if you decide to do the course today and you figure out you don't want to do it by yourself anymore, then you can always upgrade to the workshop or the private sessions. All right, guys. So it was an absolute pleasure being with you guys here on Zoom tonight. Like I said, God bless you, and I hope to help you on your legacy building journey. Everybody have a good night. Thank you so much.